coming.
Hey, Jack.
Indeed.
Wake. Go ahead and take two, Bob.
23. 22. So page 61.
Try to get my,
I know.
get them straight. Yeah,
I'm guessing.
But that's the one where we've got the guy once was on built, put a business there at a vacant home, and I don't think anyone's selling like they're for it.
you try to put the right one on the right one.
Carrie, are there any public comments?
Did you read this stuff?
Which one?
About the,
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
you read all
Yeah, you bet.
this? Does this make sense now that I read it?
Okay.
No.
You running? Okay. I call the Norton City Council regular council meeting to order for Tuesday, February 18th, 2020. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Here.
Mr. McClone?
Here.
Mr. Carratt?
Here.
Mr. Towsley?
Here.
Ms. Whipke?
Here.
Mr. Pelot?
Here.
Mr. Kernan?
Here. I understand there are no communications from the public, so moving on to Committee of the Whole. Letter A, Finance Director position, Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, before I offer this ordinance, I just want everyone to know that Ron's retiring. He's been here 5.5 years, and he'll be retiring at the end of the month. So with that, we had to go out and look for a finance director, and I think administration did an excellent job finding hopefully our new finance director. Her name's Pamela Keener. She's in the audience right there. And her starting salary would be $78,000. And I'd like to put that on tonight's agenda tonight, and I would like to suspend the second and third readings.
So is that a motion to move ordinances 25 and 26, 2020 to tonight's agenda?
They're both together.
Did I make a motion?
I was asking. Is
Okay,
that what
I'll
you're
make a
moving?
motion
Okay.
to put this on tonight's agenda.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to move ordinances number 25, 2020 and 26, 2020 to tonight's agenda for first reading. Is there any discussion?
Well, here, Joe, if you're going to move them both, I just wanted to say 26
Okay.
is the pickup contribution for the finance director. So I just want to say that for the PRS.
All right.
So it's both 25 and 26 I'd like to put on tonight's agenda as suspend the second and third readings.
All right.
So, yes, Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. Anyway, when we say the pickup, and we're saying the salary is $78,000,
Correct.
what will be the total then, actually?
I want to say it's going to be 10%.
An extra 10%. So there's Under Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, there's two different plans that employers can offer employees to pay the pension contribution. One is a employee pay, where the salary is deducted and then paid to OPERS on behalf of the employee. The second one's an employer pay, and the difference between those two is the city is responsible for the employer pay. You negotiate the total rate of salary based on whether they have the employee pay or the employer pay. Ms. Keener has requested the employer pay. That's what she's had in Rittman, and we're agreeable to that. The administration is okay with that, so that's the recommendation we're making for the total compensation package. It's the $78,000 plus the additional 10%.
And that 10% she will never see in her paycheck.
That's correct. It gets paid
It
directly
goes
to the
strictly
pension
straight to
system.
OPERS.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for the public's sake.
Thank you. So just to clean this up, I have a motion to move ordinances numbers 25, 2020, and 26, 2020 to tonight's agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second to move those to tonight's agenda. Is there any further discussion?
I think we already had a
Well,
second.
I was going to say, we already had a second.
Well, okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second to move 25 and 26, 2020. Is that everyone's understanding?
Yes.
All right. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
And Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter B, moratorium on vape shops. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, this is concerning the vapor shops that's popping up here, there, and everywhere in the state. And I think what we're trying to do is sort of get a jump on them and ask for a moratorium on them for the next 6 months. There is a House Bill 346 that is proposing prohibitions on them. So I think we're trying to sort of get ahead of the game and have it in place so that way we can study the effects of these things as it comes out into the public's eye and determine how best to award any, if any, future licensing for them. So we're proposing to have a 6-month audit or a moratorium on them. And I'd also like to waive the second and third readings and pass this on to the agenda for this evening.
So I have a motion to move ordinance number 27, 2020 to tonight's agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to move those to the agenda. I will just say this is just a moratorium for 6 months for us to study these things in light of the House bill that's coming through to decide if or if not and what type of regulations we want to place on these types of things, especially as they're where they should be in relation to schools and such things as that. So any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Whipke?
Thank you. As I understand it, we currently have a vape shop up here close to the center. Anybody correct me if I'm wrong. And this isn't going to affect them because I understand that they're just renovating there, so they're not going to be affected by this moratorium, correct? That's what I was understanding, since they're already open. This is for new ones. I'm not hearing anything. Okay, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that because I don't know is the business open? I don't know the answer.
I
to
don't
that.
know. I've been told it was renovating inside as opposed to being actual.
I don't see a lot of activity there, so.
Yeah, I haven't
How
seen
could we
anything going
vote
on, but-
or waive the second and third if we don't know the ramifications of it? I think it's garbage anyways. It's their business. If they want to have a vape shop, that's their business. The government has their hands in too much. They sell alcohol all over the place. Right down here at Acme, right across from the schools, everything else. And we're going to tell these people whether or not they can have a vape shop? Come on.
I don't believe, though, Scott, I'm sorry, Joe. I don't believe that the alcoholic establishments, any more so than what they have been for the last 75 years, are in the news as much as these vape shops.
Do you not read the DUIs? People killed by
I
them?
don't believe there's been any more so than there has been for 75 years, and the vape shops are coming out with supposed not necessarily proven, supposed lung diseases and such that's being caused by it. And yes, there are many, many, many diseases caused by alcohol, but it's a little bit different when this is a newly established type of, I don't know what you'd want to call it, whether it's good or bad, but most of them, the way I understand it, that have been talked about in public have been because of the wrongful use of the vaping devices. So no, there's no proof that yet that it's strictly caused by the vaping devices and that which is legally allowed to be used in it. But what's happening is the children and adults, to a certain extent, are using products that were not designed to be used in these vaping products. So that's what this House bill is about, I believe, is to study those effects. And I don't see anything wrong with a moratorium for 6 months to allow that to go through the legislature and determine exactly the problems that they're having with them throughout the state and other cities. And we only have, I think, if I'm not mistaken, only the one in our city now that's actually a vapor product selling business. So I do know that he does have a license and he's open. He's not physically open today, but he has been, and he's been operating under that license. So I don't believe when we check on it that he'll be affected by anything that comes into effect when this goes into effect. At least I hope not. I would not advocate that this go through unless it's absolutely 100% certain that existing business in this city would be affected by it.
My understanding is that the moratorium is on new
That's
shops.
right. That's what it
What I
says.
understood.
That's what it says. And so if there is an existing shop in the city and they're open for business or they have a license, my understanding is that they're open for business and have a license. Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking some time and looking at these establishments and looking at the health record and looking at the dangers to the community. So we spend 6 months doing that. I don't think that's a problem, honestly. I mean, taking 6 months to look at the health problems is a heck of a lot better than finding out later on that someone underage used these products and died. Mr. Courant?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I was surprised when I saw this come across on the Committee of the Whole, but looking into it, I'm in agreement with your assessment of new establishments. Plus, I've seen firsthand from the Board of Health so many of the reports that are dealing with vaping and have had this conversation with our health commissioner exactly. And I think putting this off 6 months is not hurting anything. There may be other establishments of other kinds coming to our city. I have no problem with most of them. But for a new vape shop, I think we can put a moratorium on it for a short while at least. And then later, the legislature may take care of that anyway. It'll be a moot point if they ban them. So, but I've seen the damage. I'd rather just, exactly as you said, put it off and assess it.
We've all seen the, excuse me, we've all seen the damage of cigarettes, tobacco, whether it be cigars, whatever. So if a cigar shop comes into town, are we going to put a moratorium on them as well? Because we know the health effects that has. We're not stopping it. The problems where these people are dying with these vapes, they've traced it back that these individuals, as Mr. Gaynor alluded to, are putting the illegal substances in those vapes. That's what they're smoking in it. So that's where the problem lies, not with the vape itself. Again, government has their hands in too many things. I think it's ridiculous, but...
Well, in 6 months, if we find that to be the case, and I think you may be right, that may be exactly what they find to be the case, that these are no more dangerous than a cigar shop. But in 6 months, when the moratorium is over, then we can say the moratorium is over and anybody wants to open a vape shop can come and apply for a license. It's been proven that they're no more dangerous than the cigar shops or the cigarette places or the alcohol places. After 6 months, and we can say, apply and we'll give you a license. But in the meantime, I don't see any problem with doing a little research on it. And I personally haven't had any time to read anything on it. So I think 6 months is a small period of time, short period of time to look into it. And I would recommend passage of the ordinance, move it to the agenda, and I do make the motion to move it to the agenda and to vote. Second and third bypass.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Towsley.
Just a couple of points. I don't understand the emergency to do this tonight. As it's been said, research hasn't really been done, and I understand you're talking about further research. But also at least twice, the comment of getting in the hands of children has been brought up. And it's illegal within the city of Norton for anyone under the age of 21 to purchase these anyhow. So making another law is not going to stop someone from breaking a previous law. If they're going to break the law, they're going to break the law. I just thought I'd point that out.
My turn.
All right, thank you, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I agree with some on both sides here. I don't have a problem with moratorium for 6 months on new businesses. I don't have a problem with waiving the readings for a plain and simple fact. We need to get something on our books so that somebody doesn't come in and apply to build something before we can get it passed, and it's right across from a school or another place that's housing children. And that's the main big reason why I'm all in favor of getting this done tonight, so that that does not happen before we can actually get something in place. And we can look not so much as to what some of the others have referred to. I've read some of the reports. I've watched the news. I've seen it. I agree with Mr. Gaynor, Mr. Pilot, that from what I'm understanding, the people are having problems from things that they aren't really buying from a legitimate store. But I still think we need something on the books to keep this at bay, away from people that shouldn't be coming in contact with it, just like we do for anything else around here that's to the detriment of children.
That's kind of no different than when medical marijuana was legalized in Ohio, and we placed a moratorium on anything. I think we did in the city of Norton until we studied it, as I recall. So to me, it's really no different than that. But anything else before we, Mr. Pilot?
I mean, if somebody wants something, they can jump online. They can order it. So are we going to stop people from ordering it and having it delivered straight to their home?
All right. Anything else? So I know I have a motion. Did I get a second on that?
Not yet.
Yes.
You seconded it?
Yes.
All right, so there's a motion and a second to move ordinance number 27, 2020 to tonight's agenda for first reading. Anything further? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towsley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pilot?
No.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Letter C, Springfield Township to join SWC and SWSCOM. Mr. Towsley.
Excuse me, wait a minute.
Yes, I'm
Joe.
sorry.
I'm sorry, before you go ahead. I thought that we were asking to waive second and third.
So
That's
that-
just to add it to tonight's
That's what I'm
agenda.
saying, yeah.
That's all you did.
Okay, we did say it was okay to add it to the agenda,
Yes.
though,
Yes.
right? Okay, I'm
Yep,
certain. Thanks.
yep. Letter C, ordinance number 28. Mr. Towsley.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is to add Springfield Township to our Swisscom. It'll increase it from Barberton, Copley, Norton, and now Springfield, as opposed to just Barberton, Copley, and Norton. We've been given a chart, tells what percentage, basically, a share each community will pay. Can anybody tell me what it used to be? Norton's is now 18.19.
21 or 24, something like that. It's the effect would be for 2020. The effect would be about a $50,000 decrease in the amount that Norton pays to Swisscom. For 2021, we expect it to be about between $80,000 and $90,000 of savings because of the money being brought in by Springfield.
Okay, so the whole point for all communities involved is savings.
Yeah, there's
so-
2 points. One is dispatch centers are consolidating countywide, so you either grow at this point or you die or merge into somebody else. Adding Springfield makes us number 2 for the PTAP money, which is the PSAP money, which is the grant money that's given out for based on the size of your dispatch center. So this positions us well for the future. We're able to service them through Swisscom. It's a separate entity through the regional COG that was formed between those communities without adding a dispatcher. So the same amount of employees are able to service the new community being added. So it's really a great benefit for cost-saving purposes.
And I know maybe we don't want to give out names, but are we constantly looking for more people, more communities?
We are. And I mean, there's articles in the paper. I know Green's looking to do a dispatch center. The county's constantly trying to regionalize everybody. We do have other people we talk to from time to time and just getting them to formalize. A lot of times it means giving up employees at the home community, and people don't like to lose control of their employees. It's just a comfort level there.
Springfield will not be losing anything. Summit County Sheriff does their dispatch for them.
Correct.
So basically, they won't be laying off any dispatchers by coming to the city of Norton. Also, the way the cost is set up, it's set up proportionally to the amount of residents and amount of calls the call volume that they have that will come through the dispatch center.
Okay, and then I'm seeing also that it's desires that we waive readings. I assume that's because this is.
I think
taking
we're
place for this year.
Yeah, I know it was put on there with a recommendation to waive readings. We're okay if you want to wait till next week. Barberton and Copley don't have their meetings until next week to discuss this issue. So I think everyone's planning to vote next Monday anyways. So I think if we want to wait a week, that's okay. If we could add tonight, get a first reading, and then wouldn't mind if you would be willing to waive next week, but we don't need to pass it tonight.
And if you're not aware, Springfield have already signed.
They've already approved and signed the agreement.
But will next week be a regular council meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, this is a special this week.
Ish.
And this will not, you say the dispatchers that are with Springfield now, will they be moved to here?
No. So Springfield currently uses the county, so there's
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay.
employees being lost in Springfield side. So it's really
Will
just whether
we
we can
add 'em
serve.
here?
No adding on our side either. We
Okay.
can service them with the
Yeah.
current number of dispatchers.
Okay, so with that, I will make a motion to move ordinance 28, 2020 to tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to add 28-2020 to tonight's agenda for a first reading. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Is there anything further to come before committee of the whole?
Yes, Mr. Kern. I had emailed council earlier. We have a tentative agreement with our part-time firefighters that typically for this stage of the process, we come to council for a motion to approve that tentative agreement. That gets formalized, put into a final agreement after the union approves it. It will come back to council for formal approval at that time. But we were looking if council's willing to approve that tentative agreement tonight by motion.
And so by approving the tentative agreement, it just merely allows them to approve and then come back to us.
It's telling the union that council's in agreement, the city's in agreement, and you go ahead and ratify so we can finalize the agreement on both sides.
Is there any questions or discussion? Is there a motion to approve the tentative agreement?
I make that motion.
Is there a
Move it
second?
forward to tonight's agenda.
Is there a second? I think
This would be it. This would be it, Mr. Gaynor. So you wouldn't need to have a separate motion later. It would just be this motion now, and
Right
then
here.
once the agreement's finalized, we'll come back for readings, just in the normal course with
That's
council.
So we have a motion to approve the tentative agreement. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
And I believe the council clerk has a copy of the tentative agreement, and I'm sure we'll include that in the minutes, so in case anyone's interested in what's in there.
Thank you. All right, consideration of minutes. The minutes of the regular council meeting of February 10th, 2020. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Those minutes are accepted as submitted. Reports from officers, boards, and commissions. Mayor Zita.
Thank you. I just have one, and I would like to announce that the OHM advisors, we have the park master plan. Right now, they're planning a meeting, us to schedule a meeting at Finney's Sports Bar on Tuesday, March 10th, with a formal presentation from 6 to 6:30, public engagement activities from 6:30 to 7, and then some casual conversation afterwards. So trying to put that out and get the public to attend and hopefully have some good discussion. And like I said, it's OHM Advisors. It's the group that we've hired to go over the master plan for our park system.
What's the day and time on that?
March 10th, Tuesday, March 10th, beginning at 6 o'clock.
Mayor Zita?
Yes.
Do you know, are they still taking surveys online on the website, or is that done now?
No, I believe it's still on there.
Is it? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Messner.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Mr. Markey.
Nothing this time, thank you.
Thank you. There are no public hearings. Moving on to introduction of new legislation. Ordinance number 25, 2020. Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 25-2020 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance to confirm the appointment of Pamela Hudson Keener as the Director of Finance of the City of Norton and to declare an emergency.
I move to waive the second and third reading for ordinance 25-2020.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of ordinance number 25, 2020. Is there any discussion regarding waiver only at this time?
Yes, Mr. President, since Ron will be retiring at the end of the month here, we needed to get someone in here to take over for him, so we are ready to go with Pamela.
And I might advise council that she spent her first day with me today and did a very good job.
Great. Anything further regarding waiver? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 25-2020.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 25, 2020. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Whipke?
I'd just like to say that Ms. Keener is, that's it, highly qualified, comes from a municipality, has background working with the very auditors we've been working with through the state, and has some interesting abilities that I think is going to be a real asset for our city to keep us moving on.
Anything further? I just want to indicate that she's very qualified. We had a chance to meet her, and she's well-spoken, knows what she's doing, knows what she's talking about. We are very fortunate. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tousley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 26, 2020. Mr. McGlone.
Mr. President, before we go with 26-2020, I just want to know, Pamela, would you like to say a couple words?
Just thank you very much for the kind words, and there.
Yeah, please, yeah. Pretty soon you'll have the microphone right in front of you, but.
Just wanted to say thank you for the kind words, and I'm looking forward to working with you folks and employees and everybody in the city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGlone.
Okay.
All right, ordinance number 26, 2020.
I offer ordinance 26-2020 for its first reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance that the City of Norton will pick up the statutorily required contribution to the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System for the Director of Finance of the City of Norton pursuant to ORC Section 414H2 and declaring an emergency.
I move to waive the second and third readings for ordinance 26-2020.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of ordinance number 26, 2020. Is there any discussion regarding waiver only at this point?
Yes, since this is for the new Director of Finance, we need to have this in place for the vote we just had on ordinance 25.
Thank you. Anything further? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 26, 2020.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 26, 2020. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Towesley?
This ordinance will put me above what I am prepared to agree to pay to this position. I just want to make it clear to Ms. Keener that this is not a reflection of you whatsoever. No matter who the candidate was, this would be my conclusion. So I will not be voting in favor of picking up this part of this.
Any further discussion?
Yes,
Yes,
Mr. President.
Sorry, Mr. Krant?
After looking at the comparative analysis of other communities throughout the state, we need to move to the next step and offer the position comparative salary, or we're not going to be getting the quality that we are needing to move to the next step as we're growing. I believe that we are competitive in this salary offer with pickup and everything. And I have absolutely no problem with that. I think that's right in the right range with the other comparative cities.
Thank you. Ms. Whipke?
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with Mr. Krant. We've known for a while we were going to have to up our game on this in order to keep attracting qualified people to this position. And as much as I hate to lose Mr. Messner, we've had a very good working relationship. You do come with really excellent background to be able to step right into this role as opposed to, and that's what we need. The way we're going forward, the things we're doing in this city and getting done, we can't afford to start taking a step back and not have something. So we were extremely lucky to get somebody of this quality to get into this position. So I don't have a problem with this, that this is right the ballpark. And as we said, we've seen the comparisons, and we're right there.
Thank you.
Others are going to be jealous.
We hope. Thank you. Anything further?
Keep in mind, this position, I mean, it's the one dealing with all the money, with the investments for the city and everything else. It's our money, our tax dollars. So I would rather pay a little more, have somebody very qualified, somebody that brings a lot with their background, working for the state auditor and so forth. So, welcome.
Any further comments? Yeah, I guess I'll just pipe up too. I mean, you got to pay for the people that you need in the positions. And this is a fair salary. It is well within what the salaries around here are. We are getting a very, very qualified person, fortunately, to replace Mr. Messner. We've been very fortunate with Mr. Messner. And we have to pay the salaries to have the people, and it's just that simple. It's just that simple. So, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
No.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 27, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Yes, thank you, President. Ask the clerk to read 27, 2020, please, first reading.
An ordinance placing a moratorium on new establishments that sell or distribute electronic smoking devices and/or vapor products in the city of Norton, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
I'd also like to make a motion to waive second and third readings, please.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings of ordinance number 27, 2020. Is there any further discussion regarding waiver only?
Yes, I'd just like to say, as was mentioned in the past here, we need to get a jump on this, I believe, and if there were some businesses that were wanting to come in tomorrow, this would stop it by waiving this second and third readings and having the mayor sign it. So I'd like to move ahead on it.
Any further discussion regarding waiver? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
No.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
No.
Mr. Kernan.
Yes. The second and third readings have been waived by a vote of 5 to 2. Is there a motion to adopt?
Yes, I do make a motion to adopt, please.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 27, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
No.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
No.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 28, 2020. Mr. Towesley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 28, 2020 for its first reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to the agreement establishing the Southwest Summit County Council of Governments and declaring an emergency.
And that'll be just a first reading tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Towesley. Introduction of prior legislation. Ordinance number 13, 2020. Mr. Towesley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 13, 2020 for its third reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2020 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $30,818 and declaring an emergency.
Just quickly, I'd like to point out, as I have before, but between ordinances 13 and 14, you're going to see a $7,000 difference. That's just the difference between the trade-ins we got for each vehicle. That's why they're different from each other.
Thank you for that.
So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 13, 2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 13, 2020. Is there any further discussion?
I guess for the mayor, or Justin, when will we be receiving these cars?
That takes some time.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I know when the last time.
Takes a couple months, takes about a month or something?
They have to be built.
Okay.
And that, so.
Okay.
This will give Fred Martin a jump to get it going.
Okay.
In that, and I think they're turning them out a little bit faster, but Chief Schultz had to wait about 3 or 4 months for his.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
say several
Take some
months,
time.
Yeah.
All righty.
Any further discussion?
And this is part of the replacement program that we put in place several years ago. So every year we try to get the older cruisers replaced so that way if there's an emergency, they don't have to worry about the vehicle breaking down on the way to that emergency. So
Correct.
And we're changing all over to the Durangos for the plain simple fact they can be utilized in so much easier and better.
And this will give us 4 of those now, I believe, 4 of the Durangos.
And Mayor, if you could tell the chief when he gets those in, if we can get a new updated list, it's kind of nice to have that.
Certainly.
Super.
Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 14, 2020. Mr. Towesley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance number 14, 2020 for its third reading and ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a 2020 Dodge Durango for the police department at a cost not to exceed $23,818 and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 14, 2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 14, 2020. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Resolution number 15, 2020. Mr. McGlone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer resolution numbers 15, 2020 for its third reading. Ask the clerk to read it, please.
A resolution confirming the appointment and reappointment of various individuals to various boards and commissions in the city and declaring an emergency.
I move to adopt resolution numbers 15, 2020.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 15, 2020. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. I'm just going to go over the list real quick. Who's getting appointed? Bonnie Gardner will be appointed to Parks and Cemetery Board. Richard Whitwer will be appointed to the Parks and Cemetery Board. Thomas Marino appointed to the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. Andrew Mullins, Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. Nick Jennis, reappointed to the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. Bill Helmick, reappointed to the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. Ralph Dowling, reappointed to the Planning Commission. Jim Zlata, reappointed to the Planning Commission. Miriam Peterson, reappointed to the Planning Commission. Joseph Conte, reappointed to the Civil Service Commission. Justin Markey, reappointed to the Income Tax Board of Appeals. Suzanne Boyer, reappointed to the Income Tax Board of Appeals. And Thomas Marino, reappointed to the Income Tax Board of Appeals. This term starts on 3/1 and this year, and it will end at 2/28/2023. Mayor, did I miss anyone?
I don't believe so.
I think Andrew Mullins is in the audience here. I don't know if anyone else is, but that's the list.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion regarding resolution number 15, 2020? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 18, 2020, Ms. Whipke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I offer ordinance 18-2020 for its third reading. Ask clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of a New Holland model Power Star PS 75 tractor and equipment for the service department at a cost not to exceed $77,065.
Thank you. Again, we're trading in a 1999. It's not working for $5,000 off the actual asking price. If nobody has any questions, I motion now to adopt ordinance 18-2020.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 18, 2020. Is there any further discussion? The clerk call the roll, please.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 19, 2020, Mr. Gaynor.
Thank you, President. Offer 19-2020 for its third reading. Ask the clerk to read it, please.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 46-04712 in the city from a B1 district to an R1 district.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, that's on Grenfell Road, and it's, the lady owns the property, has had problems selling it as a business area, so she'd like to try to sell it as a residential area, and I'd also like to move to adopt this, please.
Second that.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 19, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 20, 2020, Mr. Gaynor.
Yes. I'd like to ask the clerk to read ordinance 20-2020, please, for its third reading.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel numbers 46-08000, 46-08001, 46-08002, 46-04438, 46-04439, 46-03581, 46-02627, 46-08436, 46-08662, and 46-03582 in the city from an R1 district to an I1 district.
Thank you. This is at the Eastern Fairland Road properties, and I would also like to move to adopt that, please.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 20, 2020. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 21, 2020, Mr. Gaynor.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the clerk to read 21-2020 for its third reading, please.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 46-02907 in the city from an R3 RPC district to an I1 district.
Thank you. I'd like to also ask to move the motion, make a motion to move to adopt this.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 21, 2020. Is there any further discussion?
Where's this at, Jackie?
That's also the Eastern Road area there,
Okay.
the large,
Just want to make sure.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gaynor?
Yes.
Mr. Carratt?
Yes.
Mr. McClone?
Yes.
Mr. Towesley?
Yes.
Ms. Whipke?
Yes.
Mr. Pelot?
Yes.
Mr. Kernan?
Yes. Ordinance number 22, 2020. Mr. Gaynor.
Like to ask the clerk to read 22, 2020 for its third reading, please.
An ordinance rezoning property described as permanent parcel number 46-04174 in the city from an R1 district to a B2 district.
This is the property being asked to change from residential to business. And I'd like to ask, make a motion to adopt, please.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 22, 2020. This is the property on Worcester Road, correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Whipke.
Thank you. We've had numerous residents come in speaking against this. I've talked to businesses there that they don't want it. This is a residential area. The businesses across the road are basically out of the homes and they're non-conforming uses. We've already set basically, in my estimation, a precedent that if we're going to make businesses along a street that they all go at one time, we're going to rezone it. We'll rezone it all so everybody's on equal footing as we did through up Cleveland, Maslin, and Greenwich Road. So I have never and will not be supporting this tonight.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, I also will not be supporting it because of the fact that most of the residents, or all of them in that area, are against it. And a duplicate of what Charlotte said, I don't believe it should be changed one at a time.
There is one more thing I have to add.
Ms. Whipke?
I was contacted by Mr. and Mrs. Ryder today by phone, and we were supposed to have these readings next week, which they were planning on attend and speaking their opposition to again. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight since we changed the schedule. I just wanted to let that be known.
Anything further? Yeah. As I recall, planning did not approve this, correct?
Right.
Correct.
All right. Planning did not approve this, and I'll just throw my 2 cents worth in here. I mean, this particular rezone just does not fit where they're asking for it. It's residential on that side of the road. Everything is residential on that side of the road. It just doesn't fit, and so it just doesn't make sense. So I'll be voting against it. Anything further? So there is a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 22, 2020. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Gaynor?
No.
Mr. Kernan?
No.
Mr. McClone?
No.
Mr. Carratt?
No.
Mr. Towesley?
No.
Ms. Whipke?
No.
Mr. Pelot?
No.
Thank you. Public service announcements. Mayor Zita.
Thank you. I do have just a couple. On March 11th, the Barberton Area Community Ministries, the Food Pantry, they'll be doing a bingo fundraiser. It'll be here at our Norton Community Center. More information to come on that. Just save a date. On the 14th, there will be a chili cook-off at the fire department for the Norton Safety Services. That's Saturday, March 14th from 12 to 3. Chief Schultz for more information or questions. And then we are about that time of the year once again that we're looking for, we've got a cleanup day to save the date for April 18th. That will be from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's on a Saturday. We still could use sponsors or any help that day with cleanup. We're actually looking right now for individuals or groups that are interested. And to please keep in mind that it's great for community service hours. So if you're seniors at the high school and still looking for community service hours, now's the time to get them. We also have the Adopt a Spot sponsor caretakers that we're getting ready to put that in motion for this upcoming year. We'll be getting some of that here put together here in the next couple of weeks. So I just wanted to bring that and save some dates if you would.
Thank you, Mayor
Mr.
Zita.
Messner?
Mr. Messner?
Just to put it out for the public's consumption, CCA, who handles our income tax, you'll notice on the signboard downtown that they have the dates posted that they will be next door at the community center for the public to come in. They'll be there on those, I think there's 4 or 5 dates that are listed from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., free to the public. Just bring your paperwork. They'll do your city income tax for you for free.
Thank you.
Can we find those on the website?
Is that on the website?
Yeah.
And Mr. Messner, what, if anything, can you tell the public about the school tax? I've already had a lot of questions from individuals. I know it has nothing to do with the city per se. It's strictly through the school system and through the company they have.
We're referring all those questions to Stephanie Hagenbusch, the Norton School treasurer.
Perfect.
She has all that information and can dispel it a lot clearer and more accurate than we can.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will just indicate that we still have a little bit of time here to get some Easter baskets, right?
Oh, thank you. Yes, we do.
Do we? Until when?
March 13th, I believe it is. I have to double check, but we are collecting quite a bunch here. Ms. Whipke noted it looked like the bunnies were breeding.
Yeah. We have a lot of Easter baskets. I think those go to Summit County Children's Services.
That's correct.
For children in need.
And what they're really looking for are baskets for the older kids.
Okay, older kids, baskets.
Teenagers.
And I think that we take cash and checks and stuff like that too, right?
Indeed.
Of course.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
President.
Mr. Grant?
Yes, I just want to announce or remind there's a town hall meeting for Ward 3 next Wednesday evening from 7 until we're done. Probably 7 to 8 or 8:30. And at the time we scheduled that, we didn't realize that was right on top of Ash Wednesday. Our bad. And so we're also going to be scheduling a second one for those that could not attend, and it'll be on a Tuesday at the end of March. We're thinking March 30th?
31st.
31st? Okay, and that's a week that we do not have council. So I'll confirm that date later, but I just want to let that be out there. If somebody couldn't attend next Wednesday for services, I'm going to stand up in front of you all again the next month. Thank you.
And Dan, you want to tell them mainly what that's about?
Well, right now I have 8 topics that are just going to be touched on or explained, and some of those we're going to talk about the property maintenance code, getting ideas, sidewalk issues, new construction. That's an issue that's come for council. A lot of people want to talk about that. I'm looking for some feedback. Brookside development, we don't have any information at this time. I'm hoping that between those 2 meetings, at least, we'll get a little more information. Water extension, I've had questions from residents over the past 6 months to a year asking when water's coming. Well, a lot of us sort of like that well water, but some don't have enough well water to power their family of 5 or 6 getting showers. So it's one of those things that I think people can voice their opinion, and we can find out what the public needs better than having a city council meeting where people are a little bit intimidated to be on TV and come in front of everyone else and explain why they want something. It's a more open forum, and I think it's more customer friendly, and I think government should be more that way. Watershed, we're going to be discussing that. It's going to bring up at least stormwater fees. That's wrapped into the watershed. We can discuss it. Street signs, there's been complaints about signage that has been done recently, and we're looking into some alternate ways to fix that. And the assessment letter, last but least, that's a letter that's going to be coming out, I've been promised, and it's just not out there yet, but it will be, to explain the assessments and what the options are. And they'll have another month after this meeting to clear that up and decide what they're going to do, which I'm told is March 31st. And thank you for asking that question.
Thank you.
And if people want to bend Ron's ear before he leaves, you're here through the 28th?
That's correct.
All right. Anything further to come before council? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
I'm just so regimented.
I won't be guest speaker.
What is the venue for the
We're in council.